It's time to make sports talk great again with Curt Schilling and Steve Deace.
Ah, yes, it is one of the most wonderful times of the year. The madness has arrived. I am Steve Deace. He is World Series champion, future Hall of Famer Curt Schilling. For the next 2 days here on the Blaze YouTube podcast, and subscribe as you see fit, as applicable, of course. We're going to be breaking down 14 NCAA tournament games for the next 2 days. Now, we're going to skip the 2 games involving the play-in teams because of as the time we are recording this, lines for those games are not yet solidified. We are recording this on Wednesday afternoon to get this out to all of you as soon as we possibly can prior to the games tipping off noon Eastern on Thursday. So this should be up bright and early first thing, both Thursday and Friday mornings. I'm going to go through each of those 14 games. They're going to be done in my order of confidence in the pick. The lines we're going to be using are from Tuesday night when I put these final predictions together. And as we go through these, we'll talk about what a buy price is, meaning where the line could move over the next 24 hours where I might say, I changed my mind on this. Okay? All right. And so, Curt, feel free to agree, disagree, question, comment, insult as you see fit. Are you ready to go?
This is kind of your pitcher's mound, so I'm gonna defer for the most part and just ride, get along for the ride. Well,
at any point you have some advice on a good wedding gift, let me know. Okay. And we put 25 minutes on the clock now. First, I mentioned some ground rules. These are ranked in order of my confidence in each pick. We're going to keep track of these as if each of these picks is a $100 unit. All right. So I'm going to measure what my imaginary bankroll would be at the end of the NCAA tournament with a 10% VIG. All right. So right now I'm down $10 because at the time we're taping this, I went 1-1 in the games on Tuesday. So I broke even there. Actually, I'm down $20 because there's a 10% juice on both of those games. So I'm minus $20 right now for the tournament. All right. So let's begin. Now, I'm different than most people, as Curt has gotten to know over the last several months.
That's one word for it, I guess.
I would not advise most people do what I'm about to do here because most people don't think like me. I'm a master compartmentalizer. There are not many things I am a master at. Compartmentalization is one of them. Meaning I would not recommend most people put a heavy premium on handicapping their own favorite teams, because you can't remove the emotion from it, right? I'm fine with it though, okay? So I'm going to start with what I know best. My number one pick for Thursday is the under total, 131.5 in the Michigan-Montana game. And there's a few reasons why. One, the under in Michigan games all season long has been a tremendous play. It has been one of my most successful plays all year. This is the number 2 defensive efficiency team in the country. They also play at one of the slowest paces in the Power 5. They're a really meticulous team, and they don't give up a lot of points. So they're number 2 in defensive efficiency, 3rd in points allowed. Second, they just played Montana last year. These two teams played in the first round of the NCAA tournament last year. I think the total in that game, I think it was 61-47. So what's that? 108 points. Okay. So here we have teams on a strange court in a weird environment in Des Moines. They're not used to it, different backgrounds, locales, etc. They're waiting all day to play. It's the last game in the tournament. And then Michigan games, by and large, tend to lean under anyway. I'd probably go under in this game till about 128. And then after that, I'd probably beg off, Curt.
Okay. I'm good. I mean, the defensive thing, this feels like I feel much more confident than you sound, I think. I mean, this is your number one pick, though. Right. So I'm with you. I like it.
All right, here's the second most confident pick on my board, and it's Syracuse and Baylor. And this one just comes down to me, Baylor's the imitator here. All right, they like to recruit long, lean athletes to play a zone defense. Who's that sound like? That's what Syracuse does. But nobody does that better than Jim Boeheim. And, one of the problems that Baylor's had is they have a tendency to either get bounced in the first round or make the Elite Eight. That's kind of their NCAA tournament history. Syracuse's NCAA tournament history is it tends to overperform how it played in the season in the NCAA tournament. We've seen, years where people didn't think Syracuse belonged in the tournament like last year. and they beat Michigan State effectively in a road game and get to the Sweet 16. I remember the year my Michigan Wolverines played them in the Final Four in 2013. I think they were a 10 seed in the tournament that year.
Yeah.
All right, so this is a team that, Jim Boeheim set Tyus Battle out of the ACC tournament, knew he wasn't going to win the ACC tournament, made sure that his best player, his most legitimate NBA caliber scorer, was healthy, ready to go. And now I think he creates a matchup nightmare, and you're only laying 2 here. So I'd probably go up to about 4 and then maybe beg off from there. So my second most confident pick on Thursday is Syracuse -2 over Baylor in the 8-9 game.
Yep. Comfortable with that one too. I like that.
In the Midwest region, now John Calipari's record against the spread in the first round of the NCAA tournament is 3-8. That's not good. However, as you've heard me say many times, Mr. Schilling, the trend is your friend until it doesn't line up with human nature, right? So in this case, though, it's not often in the first round he has played a team that just suspended its 2 best players and then had its 3rd best player get hurt after the conference tournament. That would be Abilene Christian. Okay, so we essentially have an NBA farm team going up against something called Abilene Christian without its 3 best players. I am typically loath to lay big numbers. You don't see me do that a lot, particularly in a basketball game. But I think this is a game where Kentucky's going to have a hard time keeping the score down. So I'm going to lay the 22 points here with the 2nd-seeded Wildcats in the Midwest region against Abilene Christian. That's my 3rd most confident pick.
Well, and also, though Kentucky 3-8 against the spread in this round, it's the same thing every year, right? They come in as a 1 or 2 seed. They play a 15 or 16.
Yep.
Those are all big spreads, which leads you to walk away from that. But you're right. Abilene Christian was probably going to lose by 15 before the injuries. And you're right. I think that it's going to be very hard for them not to. I expect to see the back half of the bench early in the second half.
Let's go to the East region for my next most confident pick, Minnesota-Louisville, under 136. I've played the under. Louisville has been a consistent under the total team in the ACC all season long. Minnesota comes from the league of under the total. I mean, I would bet you that I maybe got 60% just betting under the total in Big Ten games all season long. Okay, so Minnesota really has 2 scorers on their team. Jordan Murphy, who's going to end his career as the leading rebounder in Big Ten basketball history. They've got 1 really good perimeter defender. I think Louisville's the more skilled team here. But Chris Mack, their coach, comes over from Xavier, where they were more of a defensive-minded, half-court kind of a team. This is not the Louisville of Rick Pitino, where they're pressing you and going up and down the court. So I like under the total here of 136 between Minnesota and Louisville. That's my next most confident pick.
What's your feeling on the game?
I think Louisville's too skilled in this game. I think they'll win the game by, I would guess, 5 to 8 points if I had to guess. Yeah. Let's stick with the East region. My next pick, and this is a big total, but I'm going to go over between LSU and Yale. I mean, Yale, first of all, one trend that I'm not supposed to tell you because college basketball handicappers like to keep this one to themselves. If you just bet the under in the conference tournament championship game blindly across the board, like the last 8 years, it's a 58% trend. And the reason why is teams are playing their 3rd, 4th game in a row, right? Legs are shot. They're a little slow out of the gate. Yeah. Okay. Yale, in its 3rd game in a row in the Ivy League tournament against Harvard, they put up 160 points in that game. Okay, so this is not Pete Carrill and Princeton coming in here running a backdoor offense with 3 seconds on the shot clock. This is a totally different kind of a team. LSU, a very athletic team from the SEC, won the SEC regular season title. I think, folks, I think they're just jacking them. I mean, this is going to be a game of, you're going to. There won't be a single shot clock violation in this game, unless LSU has a huge lead and just decides to run out the clock at the very end. Okay, so I'm going to go Yale LSU over 159 for pick number 5 on Thursday.
I think I think the total is going to be closer to 200 than 150.
I don't. You know what? That's a little extreme. But how high would I go? Maybe 165, 166, and then I might beg off after that. Okay, but that's still a lot more points than 159.
Yep.
Okay. My next pick out on the West region is I'm going to go straight money line here. And, I don't want to be some snotty handicapper that the public's always wrong. They're wrong a lot. Okay. But on this one, I think they're right. I think Marcus Howard from Marquette is injured with the wrist problem. We saw that in the Big East tournament. We also saw Marquette really limp to the finish line at the end of the regular season. Murray State, we're used to seeing them in the NCAA tournament. They've won that Ohio Valley Conference many times, but they've never won it before with maybe the number 2 pick in the NBA draft in Ja Morant. And I think that's the difference here, is they have a next level talent. So with the spread at about 3.5, I've picked Murray State in my sheet of integrity anyway. So especially when I'm getting plus 165. What does that mean? It means I not only win 100. This is a $165 unit. If I win it. If I lose it, I still only lose $100. Okay, so right. I'm the one now getting some extra juice here. And so since I like Murray State anyway to win the game and the spread's not that large, I'm just going to make the big play here. I'm going to go money line, the Racers over Marquette, who I know you disagree with me on this. You think Marquette's going to be a Sweet 16 team? Yep,
I do. But I'm having second thoughts since I've heard you talk the last couple of days, and I went back and looked, and I've contemplated changing my bracket of integrity, but I'm going to stick with it because I always get burned when I do that.
Right.
So
right.
I'm gonna stick with that. But I can see there aren't a lot of 165s on the opening round, and this is probably a really good one. Well, not winnable 165s,
sure.
I guess. So,
I mean, typically what you see in NCAA tournament is you'll be lucky to get more than plus 150 on any upset you think is possible. And then it's like plus 800, on stuff that would, or 1,000 on stuff that would never happen. Like it's right. Plus 1,000, I think I saw on Abilene Christian in Kentucky, for example.
Right.
All right, pick number 7. I'm going to go to the East region here in Des Moines. I'm going to go Bradley plus 18.5 over Michigan State because this game looks exact. This game reminds me a lot of Michigan State's opening game in the Big Ten tournament. Get out, get a huge lead. So if you're at a book that or a FanDuel and they let you play first half totals or first half numbers, I'd look at playing, if Michigan State's an 11, 12 point favorite in the first half, I would play Michigan State in this game. I think this is a game where you're going to see Michigan State try to get out to a big lead. Bradley's one of the slowest paced teams in the country as well, so that limits possessions here. I think this reminds me of the Michigan State-Ohio State game where Michigan State got out to a 20-point lead and then won by 7. I think you'll see Michigan State get out to a huge lead here, and then I think you'll see Tom Izzo kind of shut it down and get ready for Saturday. He doesn't really care whether they win by 12 or they win by 21. All right, so I'm going to take Bradley plus the 18.5 based on that situation.
All good.
All right, my 8th favorite pick on Thursday, Curt. I'm going to go to the West Regional. I'm going to take 10th seeded Florida over 7th seeded Nevada. That's only a 2-point spread, so really, what are the odds that I lose because, if Nevada wins by, or Florida, it's so close, I might as well take the money line, is my point.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So I'm going to take Florida money line plus 115 over Nevada. That's pick number 8 for Thursday.
You got Florida being a little bit better than people think?
Yes and no. I mean, okay. They weren't in the tournament a week ago. They kind of played their way in this last week. Okay, right. They're an offensively challenged team. I looked at the total here too. I just think if I think Florida's going to win the game anyway, and I'm getting 2 points, I might as well just go ahead and play the money line, and that's what I'm going to do. All right.
Hold on. Sorry. Echo off. Sorry about that.
That's all right. South region. Right. Let's go to Purdue, Old Dominion. The perils of modern technology. Purdue and Old Dominion, these are 2 of the slower paced teams in the country, 2 defensive teams. I think this is the kind of game Purdue's going to win this game about 65-50. All right, so right around the spread, which I think is 14 right now, and that gets me under the total of 126.5.
That's a low total.
That is a low total. But it's the kind of totals that I saw even go under frequently in the Big Ten this year. All right? So you'll notice I'm going by what I saw during the regular season. I'm going to take Purdue and Old Dominion under 126.5.
Yeah. So I don't know if you follow Barstool at all, but Dave Portnoy is a huge gambler. And so he's taken the other day, I think on conference final day, he put 10,000 on 15 games. He's that kind of guy. And I was laughing because they took the under in a game that was over the over in the first half. And I'm thinking and watching them. And then there were back-to-back games where a meaningless last-second basket cost them $10,000 each game, and both of them made it. And it was just I think when I see overs and unders at extremes, I think about that.
Let's go to the Midwest Regional next. I'm going to go New Mexico State plus 6.5 over Auburn. This is a popular upset pick with the handicapping sharps right now. I don't know that New Mexico State will win the game straight up, but this is one of those situations where A, Auburn is not a team that has a lot of success in the NCAA tournament. B, I kind of wonder if they shot the proverbial wad in the SEC tournament. Winning that's a huge deal for that program. They haven't done it since 1988 when Chuck Person, who is now the I pled guilty assistant coach for the current Auburn coach, played for Auburn back then. The other thing, too, is the altitude. All right, so this game's going to be played out in Salt Lake City, Las Cruces, New Mexico, which is where New Mexico State's from. Pretty similar altitude to what you have out there in Utah. Nothing like what they are used to down in the SEC whatsoever. So I do think, and there's a reason. That's one of the reasons why, if you go back to the old school NCAA tournament when they used to have that first two rounds in Boise every year, we would see more upsets out of there than a lot of other places because the altitude does some funky things to you. So I'm going to take New Mexico State plus the 6.5 over Auburn as pick number 10 on Thursday.
I feel a little bit more comfortable, I think, than you do. I mean, it's down here. What is it, number
it's my
10 on yours?
Yes.
Yeah. I like New Mexico winning the game outright as an upset, and I definitely like it at 6.5.
Here's my issue that I'm concerned about with the 6.5, and I actually think if you're going to play the game, I'd play the money line over the spread, okay? But my issue with the 6.5 I'm concerned about, and it's why I lowered it on my card. I'm concerned about a situation where Auburn is up by, say, 5 at the end of the game. And there's a foul or two, and they make a couple of free throws, and suddenly you lose a game by 7 or 8. That when you had that spread covered the entire time. Pick number 11, the Midwest region. Wofford is a 2.5-point favorite over Seton Hall. I think this is going to be a Wofford home game there in Jacksonville, which is a much closer drive than East Orange, New Jersey, where Seton Hall is located. I think also Wofford will be the darlings of the fan bases of the other teams as well. And this has been a team that's been in the top 25 all year long. I give Seton Hall credit for playing its way into the tournament late with some huge wins in the Big East against Villanova and Marquette. But I've been saying all along, I don't think those second-tier conferences like the Big East and the American are as good this year. So I'm going to take Wofford minus the 2.5 over Seton Hall. But here's my one fear is, Seton Hall is the bigger name team. And one thing you'll learn that I'm always leery when the smaller school is favored publicly and what that does motivationally for the school with the bigger brand. But in this case, I just think Wofford's a better basketball team from what I've seen.
I'm with you. I was thinking of that last point only on this game. Anytime you see a program with tradition and accomplishment, achievement, anytime a college coach can use us against the world, I think it works to a much bigger extent in college than in any level of sport.
Let's go to the South region next. Now, this is the South region, but the game is in Hartford, Connecticut. Okay, so Villanova, who's won 2 of the last 3 NCAA tournaments, taking on St. Mary's in the first round. So these are teams that are well known to folks who have been following the NCAA tournament. St. Mary's has been in the tournament tons of times, usually as the second team out of the West Coast Conference after finishing behind Gonzaga in the standings. This is not one of their better teams. This is not one of the better teams the Gales have had. They would not have been in the tournament had they not pulled an upset over Gonzaga in the conference tournament final. That was their only way in. They're going up against the defending national champs here, who ended up winning both the Big East regular season and conference tournament. But we saw in the non-conference when they lost to Furman, they lost to Michigan. They got destroyed by Michigan on their home floor. This is not nearly as good of a Villanova team. I do think there's 2 factors here, though. One is the distance for St. Mary's, traveling cross country. Second, the distance for Villanova. I mentioned earlier, this is basically going to be a home game for them. The number here is what scares me. If you can get this game down to, say, 3, because I do know there's some sharp action on St. Mary's in this game. So if you find a book that moves this line down to a 3, I would be all over Villanova here. But 4.5 is that is the classic spread number. To me, you only play this game if at 4.5 if you think Villanova is going to run them off the floor. Okay, because your concern is it's a 7-point game and a guy hits a 3, a meaningless 3 at the buzzer, right? That would be your concern here. Okay, so it's either you think Villanova is going to run them off the floor, and if you don't think Villanova is good enough to do that, or you might think the travel thing doesn't matter as much in 2019 as it does in 1989. You could speak to that as a former great athlete more than I could. Then fine, you take St. Mary's in the 4.5. Your read on this game, Curt?
I took St. Mary's in the 4.5 because it was 4.5. I think it's going to be a game that's going to be decided in the last minute, and hoping that we don't get that last second 3-pointer that moves it from 4 to 7 or vice versa 2 to 5.
What's your read on the travel aspect of this? Because I think it matters. I think the game time matters more than the distance, for example. Now, this is going to be a night game. If this was going to be, if St. Mary's had to play noon Eastern, so 9 o'clock in the morning in California, we see this in the NFL, right, where a lot of these West Coast teams have to play that 1 o'clock Eastern game, or we see Pac-12 teams come and play on the East Coast in college football, and they play at 9 a.m. local. I think the time of the game and what it does to the body clock matters more than the distance, but what do you think?
With rare exception, I would never, ever factor in travel in college sports, ever. At that age, you are impervious to stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And from the stand, and again, there's exceptions, I'm sure, but these kids play as much on emotion as they do on talent, and it's not the same in the NBA or the NFL or Major League Baseball, where it is a significant factor. But I don't. The only thing I factor in from a travel perspective is what we were talking about earlier, which is altitude. Because that is a significant impact on the outcome of a game when you have a team at high altitude playing at high altitude against a team that doesn't. That's dramatic. But I've never, ever been concerned about travel in college sports.
So you agree with me then that if the game was the first game in Hartford at noon, 10 o'clock St. Mary's time in the morning, it would matter more than the fact they're playing at night and the body clock is well adjusted for St. Mary's by then?
Anytime you go to a day game, the younger the players, the worse the effect. Because by nature, athletes are night owls. Mm-hmm. And so trying to adjust to a 10 a.m. tip-off at local time, that might be one of the exceptions. But again, I look at these guys almost impervious to travel and stuff like that, because this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for a lot of them.
These two games that are the last two games on our card here for Thursday's NCAA tournament action, they're the last two games on my card because, I'm a big believer there's wisdom in a multitude of counsel. So I like to know what other smart people or people I know that are smarter than me, what they think. Okay? And these are the two games on Thursday that the Sharps, meaning the people that do this professionally, that's what that means. These are the two games that the Sharps have moved the lines more in these two games than any other. And that's why they're at the bottom of my card, because here's what you need to do when you see the line moves. This Kansas Northeastern line has moved by 3 points. The Florida State Vermont line has moved, I think, by more than 3 points.
Which way is
and it's both in the favor of the underdog. The Sharps both wanted Northeastern and Vermont in both cases. Okay,
so it went from -4 to -7.
Yes, no, the other way. From
-10 to -7.
-10 to -7, yeah. All right, so here's the thing to consider. Not all line movements are the same, meaning that you can reach a point, particularly in a basketball game, where points are being scored on almost every single possession. That's why when we talk about efficiency numbers like Ken Palm registers efficiency numbers via possession. The amount of points you give up by possession, the amount of points you score per possession, because there's a lot more possessions in a basketball game than a football game, for example. Okay? And so in a football game, I would not advise you to handicap like this, because you won't get a line typically that will move big enough to justify it. But in basketball, you can. And what I mean by that is, in football, you don't want to go against the sharp line move. You do that almost every time, you're going to get killed. Okay? But in basketball, when you see a massive move like this, there comes a time of diminishing returns because here's what the public does. When the public sees the line move a couple ways, like, hey, crap, man, the guys that know what they're doing are on this. I'm going to get on it too. And then all the public money starts following the sharps who move the original line, and then it moves another point or two. And that's when you start looking at it and you think, have we reached the point of diminishing returns where now there's value the other way? Right. All right. So you may think, I think 10 points was too much to ask. That's too tall of a drink of water to ask Kansas to drink. That 12.5 for Florida State coming off a grueling ACC tournament, that's a flat spot. But 9.5? That's why in most of these picks I've offered you a buy price, meaning how low or high would I go before I back out? With these two games, I don't know that I'd go much lower. To me, you're approaching the point with Northeastern where either they're going to win the game or Kansas is going to cover because Kansas will be shooting free throws at the end that largely covers that 7-point spread. All right. So I think if you're looking at that Northeastern Kansas line, I'd be looking at going with just the outright upset then at this point.
The only thing I'm going to tell you is that if college basketball isn't your sport, which it isn't my sport, so I take advice. Anytime I see a volatile line, I'm off. I'm not going to take a chance because I don't have enough. And I would argue that beginning bettors or guys that don't, go to the extremes, no reason to touch these games. These are because they are, well, again, it's exactly what you just said. When the Sharps moves the line that much, I think it's either they're not sure, and I don't want to touch a game they're not sure of. Unless you can get
the uncertainty is why they were the lowest 2 ranked picks on my card is because of the uncertainty you just talked about. Yeah. Yep. So like if we had done this on Sunday night, right after the bracket came out in the original lines, and Kansas was favored by 10 or 11, and Florida State was favored by 12 or 13, I would have been on the underdogs in those games. Okay. But now I think the line has moved enough that sooner or later, unless, there's a letdown spot, and those people there's no letdown spots in the NCAA tournament. Well, that's the case. Why are there upsets? Of course there's letdown spots.
No, there is.
All right.
Absolutely.
So, but I think you're reaching the point now where the lines are approaching, you might as well just play the money line territory.
Well, I have Kansas going to the final game.
Right. So you're not going to play Northeastern on the money line in this one.
But I mean, how much confidence do I have in them covering the spread in the first round where it is fluctuating that much?
All right, so we'll be back again here tomorrow. We're going to do all the same thing. You'll look at my card for Friday's games right here on We Talk Sports.